If you clicked on this video, I won't pretend I know why. Maybe you're curious. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe something in the title felt uncomfortably familiar. My name is George. I'm 87 years old. And at this stage of life, people expect you to sound certain. They expect wisdom to roll off your tongue neatly, like a lesson learned and wrapped with a bow. I don't have that. What I have instead are pauses, long ones, the kind where you stare out a window and forget what you were about to say. I have memories that return out of order, and I have one truth that waited most of my life before asking to be spoken. This isn't a story about being brave. It's a story about being late. I'm not here to teach you anything. I wouldn't dare. I'm just here to talk, the way older people sometimes do when they finally stop trying to impress anyone. There are things we carry quietly for decades, not because we enjoy deception, but because we're afraid of what honesty might cost us. Love, stability, the life we already built with shaky hands. And sometimes, by the time we're ready to speak, time itself has already taken its toll. If you're still listening, thank you. Sit with me for a while. When I met Eleanor, I was not the man you're hearing now. I was young, restless, eager to be seen as someone solid, someone worthy of being chosen. I remember the way she looked at me, like she believed I already knew who I was. I didn't. But I wanted to live up to that look, so I became careful. I spoke confidently about things I hadn't fully thought through. I agreed when it felt safer to agree. I held back questions that might make me seem uncertain, complicated, or difficult to love. At the time, none of it felt like lying. It felt like growing up, like shaping yourself into what life seemed to reward. When Eleanor smiled at that version of me, I told myself the rest could wait. I told myself, I'll explain someday. What I didn't understand then is that love doesn't just accept what you show it. It builds around it. And once something is built, changing the foundation feels dangerous. We imagine lies as dramatic moments, but the longest ones begin softly. They begin as fear dressed up as politeness, as silence mistaken for kindness. And one day, you realize you've been silent for 43 years. Silence doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in quietly like dust. Years passed faster than I expected. One job turned into another. Children came into our lives, loud and demanding and wonderful. Days filled up with schedules, bills, repairs, responsibilities. And somehow, without any decision being made, the silence stayed. Every time I felt the truth rising in my chest, there was a reason to push it down. Eleanor was already tired. The children were still young. We had finally reached a stable place, emotionally, financially, practically. Why introduce uncertainty into something that seemed to be working? That's how silence defends itself. It always sounds reasonable. What startled me later wasn't how long I stayed quiet. It was how normal it felt. I learned how to adjust conversations just enough, how to answer honestly, but never fully, how to laugh, participate, support, and still keep a small locked room inside myself. Slowly, something shifted. I began editing my thoughts before they reached my mouth. I avoided questions that might lead somewhere dangerous. I told myself I was protecting Eleanor, protecting the marriage, protecting peace. But over time, I noticed I felt strangely alone, even sitting beside her. The lie didn't grow heavier. I grew smaller around it. We don't wake up and choose dishonesty. We practice avoidance. And after enough years, silence stops feeling like fear and starts feeling like personality. For a long time, I truly believed the lie had no cost. From the outside, our life looked solid. We shared meals, we argued and made up, we raised children. We showed up for weddings, funerals, birthdays. People would say, "You two have something special." And I believed them. But there was a thinness I couldn't explain. Conversations stayed safe. Feelings stayed measured. There were topics we never quite touched, not because Eleanor avoided them, but because I did. I didn't know how to invite her into a part of me I had locked away for so long. I see now that withholding truth doesn't just hide information, it limits intimacy. Love can survive many things, but it struggles to deepen where honesty is rationed. At night, lying beside Eleanor, there were thoughts I never spoke. Not dramatic thoughts, just honest ones. Questions, doubts, parts of myself that never quite found daylight. I don't punish my younger self for this. He was afraid, not cruel. Still, I feel the weight of moments that could have been more open, more vulnerable, more human. Sometimes the cost of a lie isn't betrayal or explosion, it's erosion. And erosion is so quiet that you don't notice it happening until decades later, when you wonder why something precious feels thinner than it should. Aging changes the way questions sound. They don't arrive urgently. They arrive honestly. When friends began disappearing, first from dinners, then from life, I felt time press closer, not threatening, just present, like a reminder you can't ignore. I found myself sitting alone more often, asking questions I had avoided for years. Who actually knows me? What parts of my life have only existed inside my head? What would Eleanor never hear if I didn't wake up tomorrow? Truth doesn't demand attention when you're young. It waits patiently while you build careers, families, identities. It understands how busy you are becoming someone. But one day, it taps you gently and asks whether comfort is still worth the distance it creates. I didn't suddenly become brave. I didn't have a moment of clarity. I just became tired. Tired of protecting an image. Tired of rehearsing answers. Tired of carrying something that no longer fit inside the life I had left. At a certain age, you stop asking what's safe and start asking what's honest. There was no dramatic setup, just a quiet evening. Familiar furniture. Eleanor reading beside me. The clock ticking loudly in a room that had heard decades of silence. I felt something heavy in my chest. Not panic, not urgency, just a sense that if I didn't speak now, I never would. My voice shook. That surprised me. I spoke slowly, carefully, not to persuade, not to justify, just to tell the truth. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't defend myself. I simply told her who I really was and who I had been pretending to be. I expected anger, or shock, or the end of something sacred. What I didn't expect was how small I felt. Not weak, just exposed. Like I had finally stepped out of a role I'd been playing for most of my life. I won't repeat Eleanor's words here. Those belong to us. What matters is this. The truth didn't arrive like a weapon. It arrived like air. Uncomfortable at first, strange, but necessary. And for the first time in decades, I felt fully present. Telling the truth didn't fix everything. It didn't erase years. It didn't rewrite our history. It didn't magically make us closer in every way. But it removed something invisible, a wall I hadn't realized was always there. Honesty doesn't promise comfort. It promises reality. And reality, I've learned, is easier to carry than pretense, even when it's complicated. There were moments of sadness, regret, quiet grief for what might have been different, for conversations we never had when we were younger. But there was also relief, a strange lightness in not editing myself anymore, in not guarding every sentence, in allowing Eleanor to see me fully, even if that view wasn't perfect. Truth doesn't guarantee forgiveness. It doesn't promise a happy ending, but it gives dignity. At this age, dignity matters more than perfection. As I've grown older, I've stopped needing certainty about life, about belief, about myself. I used to think doubt meant weakness, that strong people knew exactly what they believed and never questioned it. Now I see doubt differently. Doubt is attention. Doubt is care. Doubt means you're still listening. People change. Beliefs shift. Love evolves. What matters isn't consistency, it's honesty as questions grow and change. I've learned to say, "I don't know," without shame. There is humility in uncertainty, and peace in allowing others the same freedom. Being human, I think, is less about answers and more about honesty in motion. I don't know what truth you're carrying quietly. Maybe it's small. Maybe it feels too heavy to name. Maybe you've been waiting for the right moment, the right age, the right courage. I won't tell you what to do. Life is too complicated for instructions. All I'll say is this: time listens patiently, but it doesn't wait forever. And honesty doesn't need perfection. It doesn't need bravery. It only needs reality. If this leaves you with questions instead of answers, that's not failure. That's openness. Curiosity is gentler than certainty. Kindness is stronger than fear.